Hi there, this is Lynn with Vicki Lee Bags, and I hope you're having a really great day. So we have an exciting show for you today. We are going to be making these water bottle cozies. Okay, there's been so many times that I've made videos on bags, and many of you have commented on the water bottle cozy that is behind me. So today's the day. We're going to make this. They are so fun, and they're really good for craft fairs. I'm actually going to be in one in a couple of months, so this was a good time for me to make these and show a video on how to make them. So you can make them all different size for any size bottle that you may want to carry. Some of you will have these nice tall ones that are already insulated, so you don't have to add a lot of insulation to these. It's just the cover with the really nice handle. And of course you can make the handle any length you want to. I just chose this one. This is the one I take to work, and it's just a really good size for me when I have other things in my hand to take back and forth throughout the building. Okay, so I'm going to get my things ready and we will get started. Okay, so this is the cozy that we are going to be making today. It does hold the 16.9 ounce water bottles that we see sold just about anywhere. You can make any type of bottle cozy that you would like. I'm going to show you how to measure any one of them so that you can make them for just about any size you want. Okay, so to get started with this, you are going to need your focal fabric, of course. This is the one that I have chose today. And the measurements for this are 9 1/4 inches in width by 7 1/4 in height. I did put my logo on it right here, so this is a good time to do this before you get started. And then of course it's insulated with the insulated fleece, but they just call it Insul fleece. It is a Pellon product. The reason we're using that kind of interfacing is because these bottles have no insulation in them. Okay, so they get warm really fast. Whereas these other bottles that are already vacuum insulated, okay, they don't need any insulation at all because it's all insulated on the inside of this. So basically it's just the cozy and the strap to carry it with, okay? But on these ones that have no insulation on their own, we went ahead and added some insulation. I always add a little bit of fusible fleece to my cozies anyway because it makes them feel really nice, and it's not just raw fabric. Okay, so again, it's 9 1/2 by 7 1/4. The lining, yes, they are lined, is the same exact measurements. So again, 9 1/4 by 7 1/4. And how I measured to make it fit this bottle is you can put a measuring tape around it and measure the circumference of it, and please add 1 inch. Okay, and the reason for that is because by the time you put the insulation on it, it does take up a little bit of space. And so what I've done is after I do the inch, a little inch bigger, I fold it like this and make sure that there's plenty for a seam allowance. This one I cut a little tiny bit short, but I already know how I'm going to correct for that. I'm not going to do a 1/4 inch seam because then I will have made it too tight. And let me tell you, when you make these too tight, you're not getting that bottle in there. It's very frustrating. I've already thrown 2 away because I've done that. I was not going to take it apart and remake it. Okay, so make sure before you start sewing that it does fit it all the way around. For the bottom piece, I just cut out a 3 by 3, and I went ahead and I insulated it with the thermal fleece again. Okay, and this is going to be the bottom of the cozy. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to make that a beautiful round cut. You also have these little tabs to hold your clasp, okay? It's got a small D-ring on it and a little tiny little lobster claw clasp, okay, to hold your handle. And so for that, you're going to make just one cut. It's 4 inches by 2 inches. So it's 4 inches by 2. And I'm going to show you how to make 2 tabs out of that. Then for your handle, it's 12 inches and a half by 2 inches wide. It's going to make a thin handle, but that's really all you need for this size bottle and carrier, okay? It's just the perfect handle. You can make this any length you want, any width you want, any length you want. But this one again is 12 and a half by 2 inches. I only insulated the very center of it, okay? There's a reason for that. This part here is going to be going around the little clasp, okay? And if it gets too thick, it's really difficult to sew. So do what you'd like, okay? You're going to figure all this out as you make a few of them anyway. But I have learned only to keep the sewing machine happy and not going over too much layers of fabric. I have just put a piece of light interfacing right where the handle part, where I'm going to be grabbing it, will be. Okay? So the hardware for this is very simple. Just the 2 D-rings. These are little 1/2-inch D-rings. Okay? And if you haven't ordered these yet, my favorite place is to get them off of Etsy. Okay? And they are the silver 1/2 D-rings. And then same with Etsy, I also got these just darling little lobster claw, and they're just perfect for the handle of these. Okay, they're just absolutely perfect. They're strong and they just work, really, really well. Okay, so I'm going to get these things ready and we will begin our project. Okay, so for our little tabs, what we're going to do is take it over to the ironing board and you're going to fold it in half, give it a good press, then you're going to fold your ends towards the middle, both of them, and give it a good press, and then finally just fold it in half, okay? Give it a good press. I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew close to the edge, up and around and back down the other side. And when I come back, we will put our little D-rings on. Okay, so I did finish that. And what I'm going to do now is I need to cut it in half before I put my little D-rings on. So I fold it in half, helps me find the center. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut it in half. Okay. So now we're going to put the D-ring on. Now, this part is necessary to me because I don't like to put a D-ring on a purse or a bag, and as you use it, it starts to turn on you like that, and it's just not, I just don't like it. So what I have done is, after I put it on, I try to sew as close to the bottom of the D part of the ring so that it always stays in the position that I want it to. So that's completely up to you. I just think it looks more professional. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and very carefully, without breaking a needle, kind of as close as I can without, breaking a needle. And I'm going to do that with both. And then when I'm done, we're going to talk about how we get started on the main part of the cozy. Okay, so I did finish the little tabs. I did sew this across there. What we're going to do now is we're going to take our focal fabric and our lining fabric. The focal fabric will stay faced up. Make sure that you, if you did put a logo on, that it's wherever you want it to be. I have made it like this before. This was upside down, and that's just always a joy. Okay, so, and then you're going to take your inside fabric, lay that on top, square them up. Then you're going to fold it in half and make these two shorter ends meet. Okay? And then I just put in a pin. Okay? So now I lay it in front of me, fold it flat, and I want to mark the center where I would like my little tabs to go. So here is my center, and I'm just going to draw a line about the little width of my tab. Okay, make sure it's in the center where I would like it. So I'm going to do it on this side and on this side. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take out my pin, open it up, so now you want to take your little tab with the D-ring and you want it pointed down. Okay, so you're going to open this up, and in between the two layers of your focal fabric and your lining fabric, you're just going to set this in like this and make sure it lines up with your little marking. And you can decide how deep you want to go or how far out you want to go. You don't ever want to risk running over your D-ring, so I come in and leave just a little bit of it out. So let's say you just want to see 1/4 of an inch of that showing when it's all said and done, okay? So just 1/4 of an inch of your tab showing. Make sure it's straight. And I'm going to put a clip right there to hold it, just kind of from the side, like that, okay? Do the same with the next one. Point it down. I'm only going to leave 1/4 of an inch showing and add a clip. Okay, so I'm not going to take you with me this time, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way across the top, only 1/4 of an inch down, okay? Okay, so you can see that I did do that, and when you open it up, this is what it'll look like. If you folded this down, your little tabs would be standing up, okay? So now just take it over to the ironing board, and you're just going to press this down. Okay, you're just going to tuck in your fabric, your lining fabric in just a little bit, and just give a little press here and over here on the other side, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so the next part is to open this up, and you're going to line up these two center pieces of the focal fabric and the liner and make sure they match right there, seam to seam, and go ahead and open the seams up. And I'm going to put a pin in here to keep it open. Maybe a clip will work a little bit better. Okay. And then maybe one here on the end. Okay, now on the lining part, what we're going to do is we're going to sew. Mine is going to be a little thinner than yours. Remember I told you I made mine a little bit tight. But you're going to sew about 1/4 of an inch up a little ways, stop sewing. You're going to leave about a 4-inch part where you don't sew, okay? You're not going to sew 4 inches. And then you're going to continue sewing on all the way to the end. Okay, so I'll just add my little clips here to remind me to stop there. And here. So just to recap real quickly, you're just going to sew about 1 inch in, leave a space of 4 inches, and then continue to sew down, making sure that your seam stays open. Okay? And I'll meet you back here. Okay, so at this point, you can take it over to your ironing board if you would like and open up this seam and give it a press. I'm not going to take the time to do that today. So now take your water bottle just to make sure that it'll fit in there, and it should be a little bit loose. Okay, because by the time you put the lining in there, it's just going to work. Not super loose, but a little bit loose, okay? So if I were to put my pinky in there, it would just barely fit in there, and that should be just about right. Now we're going to work on the disc part, the round part, which is always a little bit tricky, but I am hopefully going to make it easier for you than it was for me starting out. So what I've done is take your 3-inch by 3-inch piece, and I'm going to turn it over to the interface side. Now I lucked out because I have been before doing this is I would set it down because I am not a math person at all. I am not going to try to figure out how to work a protractor. It's just me. Okay, it's a very silly part of me. And I used to take it and I used to go around with my pen leaning up against this and drawing a 1/4 of an inch circle around. Well, I got so tired of that. And I looked at this one day, and this is for a 4-ounce canning jar lid, the smaller one. And I got so excited because it was just about the exact same size as this. But you need it, your seam size, bigger. So in other words, you need it not only the size of the bottom, but you need to allow for your seam allowance, which for me is 1/4 of an inch. This was slightly bigger than my bottle, but it wasn't quite 1/4 of an inch bigger. So what I do is I just lay this down and freehand I draw ever so slightly bigger to make up for the 1/4 of an inch. Now, I'm sorry to say it like this, I'm just going to be really honest with you. You might have to duke it out on your own. I'm so sorry, but I have been doing it like this for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really, really happy with the results. So I'm just sharing with you what I have learned. If you're good with math and you can do the protractor thing, that's great, but I don't care to learn that right now, or maybe even ever. So I just draw I draw in my seam allowance, okay? And it's going to work just fine. I'm just going to cut this out. Like I said, I just held my bottle down and drew 1/4 of an inch around it, and I had a pretty good result. But when I found this little lid in my cupboard, I thought, hey, why not? So it's just made things a little bit easier. I did the same technique with the lining one, but remember that one doesn't have any interfacing at all. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you before we get started putting that on. You're going to take this piece, and I want you to cut in to it only little bit less than your 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so you don't want to cut past that because then you will see it when you put this on and it'll just hurt the integrity of it. So I go through about every 1/2 inch or so, and just put in a little notch. It's not wanting to go through both fabrics very well, so I'll have to do it this way. Be very mindful that you don't go in any further than 1/4 of an inch, okay? And I do that on this part and the liner part. This just helps you to make the circular part go on much better. Okay, so I'll do this end as well. I found it to be really tricky working with the round bottom. And then the more I did it, the better they got. And now they're just a non-issue. But this is how I had to do it. I had to put these little notches in it. And once I figured out how to cut out the right diameter, then I did really well. So let's say I have these bigger ones here. What I did is I set it down on the fabric that I was going to cut out, and I drew a circle 1/4 of an inch around it and cut it out, and I've had a really, really good result with that, okay? I just think these are so cute, and people are always trying to ask me to make them one while I'm at work, and I just tell them, you know, go visit my Etsy and see what you can find on there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the focal fabric first, and I'm going to find the seam over here, and you want to make the focal side down towards, all you want to see is the interfacing, okay? You can either pin or you can use clips. I like to use clips for this part. I just don't like to get poked. Okay. Take your time on this next couple of parts because it really is going to make a difference of how good it looks and how well the bottle fits in there. Okay. So then, because these spread open really nice for you, I'm just going to go around and let these spread apart like this to help me make the circular. And about every inch I put a clip. And I do that all the way around. Sometimes it doesn't line up perfectly, so what that means is this part, I didn't sew it in close enough, but I'm not going to correct that. I'm going to do the correcting here because I don't want to make it too tight. We talked about that before. Okay, so it was just a very minor adjustment on the seam part. So now what I'm going to do is take it over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to move my needle to where it's 1/4 of an inch away from the side of my presser foot. That is going to give me an exact 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to see if I can show you what that's going to look like. I want want this seam to be open, and it's not a very large seam, so it's kind of hard to grab. Okay, another thing I want to show you, I'm going to try to move my camera here in a second, is I sew it from this angle, okay? If you're more comfortable laying it on the table like that, that's fine, but I prefer it to be up like that, and I'll just move it as I go around, okay? So let me situate my camera a little better closer to my sewing machine, and we'll get started on this. Okay, so I'm going to start, the seam is on my left here, and what I want to do is make sure that my fabric is laying really nice and that these pieces are opening up. Excuse me. And I go very, very slow. Lift my presser foot. Excuse me. And continue sewing. Very slow. This can get really tricky. I'm telling you, it took me a while to get used to this, but I love the bottom when it's done. It looks really, really professional. Very, very nice. So you kind of have to pull and tug this part, make it really your own. You've got to take control of it. You know what I was thinking too? You can hand sew this in place before you sew it on. That's probably the best way to go. I'm just too impatient. So I have to constantly keep moving this part back and making sure these little notches are spreading apart as I sew to make that round part sewn on there correctly. I'm moving that out of my way constantly. Okay, we're almost there. Little part. We'll do a little back stitch. Okay. Let's see how we did. Okay, and then I like to cut away some of the edge that is really, really too much. I don't need all of that. Just be careful not to sew into your stitch. But that looks really good. I'm very pleased. I might go over this one little piece a little bit more because it's very close to the little notch that I cut in there, and I do not want that to be an issue. So I'm going to do that, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so now what I like to do is take my scissors and I cut away some of the bulk around the edge. Be very careful not to go too close. I just take off very little. Just makes the bottle sit a little nicer and it's a little easier to put in. So I'm just going to cut this away. Hopefully that wasn't too trying on you. My first few times doing this, I was just so upset. I just couldn't, wasn't going to work. It was never going to work. I was never going to figure it out, but I did. I just stuck with it, went nice and slow. Once you figure out the size of the bottom to any bottle you make, if you follow my formula, you should be okay. So now what I want to do is I want to take the whole thing, and we just need to test it at this point. I'm just going to pull it through like this. Okay, push my lining back in. That does not have its little bottom in yet. That's okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my water bottle. I'm going to push it in. So far, so good. My round bottom came out really, really nice. It's very, very clean. It's so far just an amazing fit. It's not going to change. So if you've gotten this part and you can get it in, it's not too tight or way, way too loose, then you did really good. Okay, so the next part is exactly the same thing, but with the lining. I'm not going to take you with me when I sew up the lining. Just remember to open your seam, take your little disc, and you should see the back side of your disc when you pin it on. 1/4 inch seam, sew it on really nice, and I'll meet you back here when I finish mine. Okay, so that went really well. Hopefully it went well for you. So you're going to open up your side seam and you're just going to pull the whole thing through. I like to do the main body first. Okay. Okay, and so the next part of this is we want to sew up the side seam. Do not take much fabric. Don't come in very much. Just sew along the very, very edge. You can hand sew this as well. I just like to save a lot of time. Okay, so I'm going to take a second and sew this up. Boy, we are so close to being done. Okay, so we're going to tuck the whole thing in. Use my hand to push that down. Okay, and then I just finger press this part. Now you're going to go back to your sewing machine, and I like to come in from the inside here because it's not big enough to go over the arm, and I'm going to start right next to this seam. Be very aware of where your little D-rings are. You don't want to sew them at all. And I come in a little bit less than 1/4 inch. Okay, a little bit less. Nice and slow, because you're going to see this from both sides. Make sure my D-ring is out of the way. Very, very slow. Be very patient. You hear it going over your tab, which is nice. It adds extra strength because we're doing this part as well. back tack, cut my threads, and this part is done. All we have to do next is the handle. Okay, this was nice and clean. It came out really nice. I'm pleased with that. And there is your little cozy. Take my water bottle and show you how nice it fits. Not too tight, not loose, it's not coming off. There we go. And look at how nice that came out. I'm super, super pleased. So now we just need to make the little handle. And you know what? That is just the easiest part. As you know, what I like to do is I'm going to take it over to the ironing board. I'm not going to take you with me, but I'm going to fold this over 1/4 of an inch on both sides. Okay. Then I'm going to fold the whole thing in half to make a really nice crease down the middle. Just like we did our tabs. Fold this to the middle, this to the middle, and then finally fold the whole thing over so no raw edges are seen. I'm going to sew all the way up and all the way around, very close to the edge. When I'm finished with that, I'm going to show you how we attach our little swivel hooks to it. And then we're finished. I will be right back. Okay, so I finished my little strap. All I have to do now is add it to the hardware. You know what I wanted to tell you? I talked about it a little bit earlier. You can make a wider strap, especially if you have the little findings like this one, okay, that's got the D-ring already built into it. You just have to make your cutout 4 inches wide by 12 inches long for this size water bottle. Okay, so if you don't have these small D-rings, but you want to make this and you're going to go ahead and make a fatter handle, that'll work really nice. That'll work well. But these little ones are really handy to have. So I'm going to show you how I put these on. So I just pinch the end, because see, this is circular. So I pinch the end to go through the circle part. And I only go about 3/4 of an inch. And I fold this over. And you're going to see quickly how thick the whole thing got. That's why I didn't add any interfacing just to this part. So I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and just go over this part close to the edge about 2 or 3 times. Okay? Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and you are completely finished with this project. Okay, so I'm going to do that right now. I start in the middle, by the way. That makes it not push to the left or to the right and make it off center. I'm just going to go forward and back. Yeah, my machine likes this a lot better with it not being interfaced. Okay, so we'll do the next one exactly the same way. You know, Vicki Lee Bags does have a Facebook page, and I encourage you to upload your pictures to our page. We'd all like to see how well you fared with your projects, see how much you enjoyed them, what you enjoyed about it, and, you know, if it was easy for you, difficult for you. We all like to hear that. It encourages all of us. Okay? and just go forward and back. One more time. And there we have it. Cut off all of our little strings. And there you go. Look at that. And you just attach it to your cute little rings. I just think these are so cute. Like I said, I get a lot of compliments on them. And there you have your cute little water bottle cozy. So there's another project with Vicki Lee Bags. I thank you so much for joining me today. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing. Bye-bye.